Phototrophism, done by Kimberly, Samantha, Omar, Izzy, and Alexander. For the biology spring semester project, we designed and created an experiment based on phototrophism, trying to answer the question, can plants learn? Things we'll be addressing in this video is identifying the hormones responsible for phototrophism, identifying the cell type responsible for secreting this hormone, and describe how cells respond to accomplish the behavior we measured. We will be connecting our work to Smarty Plants and connecting our work to the podcast From Tree to Shiny Tree. We had a control group and an experimental group. Our control group was just exposed to natural light, and our experimental group was exposed to natural light plus after the sunset was exposed with 6 hours of a grow light. Since only one of the plants germinated and we did not have 30 seeds per our experimental group, we cannot say that our hypothesis is supported with this insufficient data.
When first planting the lima beans, the seed itself is covered in a seed coat, which is a protective outer layer of the seed. The hypocotyl is a germinating seedling stem and is found beneath the cotyledons. The role of the hypocotyl is to push the cotyledons above the ground to develop and germinate. In order for the hypocotyl to push out the cotyledons, it must receive a source of light. The plumule is part of the seed embryo that develops into the shoot bearing the first true leaves. In order for the plumule to function, the cotyledons must first be pushed above to the surface, and the only way for the cotyledons to rise to the surface is for the hypocotyl to push them above. Basically, if one cannot develop, then the others cannot function. When looking at the plants we grew, it shows that the hypocotyl was never able to germinate. Therefore, the cotyledons nor the plumule was ever able to do their job except for one seed, which is grown under natural light. An explanation to why the hypocotyl was not able to germinate would be because of temperature. Although bean plants grow better in natural sunlight, there were many days when cold temperature occurred. In order for seeds to germinate, the soil must be between 70 to 90 degrees warm. However, if the soil is below 60 degrees, the seed will slowly germinate. There were also days when the climate reached above 90 degrees, which affects the bean plant, causing the pods to have trouble forming their pods. An explanation for why the seeds under the LED light were not able to grow would be because bean plants do not react well to colored light, and causes them to decrease levels of carbohydrates and protein.
So, why do plants grow? There isn't one definite answer, but something we do know that plays a great part in plant growth is the use of auxins. Now, auxins is a term used to describe hormones responsible for plant growth and development. They use things like gravity and light to decide which way the plant grows in order to receive the most energy from the sun. Now here, how auxins work. The initial principle for auxins is that they are highly sensitive to light, and when the light source hits them for a long period of time, the auxins slow down production in one area being hit by the sunlight. Now, the production begins on the opposite end of this, causing a bend which directs the main reproductive organ of the plant towards the sun. So it is guaranteed more solar energy from that side. Now this only happens when the sunlight is hitting it on one side. So then it turns, for example, if a plant is put sideways and the sun is up, so it's gonna go up and lean towards it. That's why there's sometimes plants that are like bending oddly, but that was because they were grown a certain way. And thank you, that is all.
This experiment can be connected to the podcast Smarty Plants by Radiolab. Both this experiment and the podcast touch on the topic of plant intelligence. The podcast discusses a tree whose roots are moving towards a water pipe, as well as a plant that moves towards the sound of flowing water. Similarly, our experiment represents a plant growing upwards towards a light source. Although plants do not have a brain like humans, they are capable of learning as well as remembering what they learned. It is important for plants to learn and remember new behaviors for survival. The tree's roots mentioned in the podcast learn to grow towards a water source, and the plant in our experiment learned to grow towards a light source. Both water and sunlight are essential for photosynthesis. Photosynthesis allows plants to create their own energy food. Plants may lack brains and neural tissues, but they do have a calcium-based signaling network. This signaling network allows for plants to learn. With the ability to learn, plants can grow and produce offspring.
The way that this experiment can correlate to our work is that the lima beans that was in the direct sunlight, only one was able to germinate. This could be the reason due to having an abundance of carbon. As said in the podcast, it discussed a little segment that without the fungi around, the tree will overproduce of carbon, and only carbon, and it will soon be like roughly size of a tulip. So it claims that when only carbon is around, it just be smaller or weaker. This could also be said for our experiment. As we give them sunlight and other stuff, it may not have fungi or anything around, which may result in less germination or any growth for any plant except for that one. From the Tree to the Shining Tree was a podcast by Jay and Robert Coolidge that mainly discussed about the connection network beneath the forest, where deals are made between the trees and the fungi, and that the fungi provides nutrients and minerals towards the tree, while the tree provides 20% or to 80% amount of sugar to the fungi. The fungi creates networks to connect to trees, kind of showing like a telephone line or a highway, if you will. Towards the end of the podcast, it talks about how once a tree is dying due to some circumstance, it signals to neighborhood trees and start to give their carbon to not just trees that have the same species, but instead it gives to the new plants or plants that have a better chance of survival. As well, if a tree is injured, say for instance in the podcast, it talks about a case where a tree was being eaten by bugs, the trees will signal to the other trees how it's being attacked by the bugs, and in response the neighbor trees create something that makes the bugs not want to eat it, some sort of toxin, if you will.